17 hours to see her kid.
How are you today?
It better be covered.
Oh, it will.
No, that's what-
He gets
that's
that
the rule.
sea duty pay and hazardous duty pay and foreign duty pay, and
That'll cover a ticket.
that's it.
Can't even-
No surprises on the agenda for you.
Thank goodness.
I wish I had the prices.
Oh, man.
I didn't think it was that good.
It's all good, it's all good, it's all good. Oh, I just hope we get any of this rain they're claiming we might get.
Yeah, I loved watching it go from 83% to nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's because apparently it all fell on Country Village. We got over an inch
Wow.
You did?
Well, not out of today's
last
stuff.
night,
That-
but
We didn't get anything last night or today.
No, this was last week or whatever.
Oh,
We got
yeah.
like an inch before.
We
I
got-
mowed my grass Sunday and I dumped an inch out of the rain gauge.
Oh, wow.
A couple days since it rained, so.
Dang. Hi, sir.
How you doing?
All right, how are you?
All right.
Good evening, Pastor.
Yeah, no. I keep, of course, so it got chilly today and talked to my son. I'm like, hey, I told you not to send this cold stuff down here. I retired down south for a reason.
Yeah.
He goes, well, I gotta share the temperature up here in Newport. No, you don't.
Nope, we'll pass. Thank you. No, we had visitors in from Ottawa
Ah, yes.
last week.
Woo-hoo.
And
Mine.
it's, the high today was 35, and
Yeah.
tonight's 21.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, see,
So they're staying in
Okay.
Austin tonight.
I got family following there, so. Me mother's twin sister, lives up in Ontario, and then, my one aunt, when she was alive, was the, basically one of the House of Representatives for the island of Newfoundland in Ottawa.
No, but I saw her this weekend, and she's really jazzed about it, so. Oh, yeah, you told me that. She's gonna have you buy the material, so that's that.
How you doing, sir? I'm doing fine.
Yay. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that at the last meeting, you were telling me about that ridiculousness. Yeah, that's not,
when you don't need the work and you don't wanna do that job, you should just say, I'd rather not.
some
do that job."
astronomical, yeah.
I don't think, this is not down my alley or whatever. I had to tell somebody that this week, a client referred a friend of his to us for a job in San Antonio. I said, this is not the kind of work I do, I'm sorry. I've done it twice last week, actually. I hate to chase off work, but I don't want to do it.
Oh, yeah, no. I understand that. I can understand that.
And I can't keep up with what I do have to do. So
Yeah,
I'm just basically not putting anything on my schedule as much as I can for the next 2 weeks, because I've got 5 projects. And I
His
need
plans when we started talking, sir. We got plans to build this.
4 of them have to go to the Texas General Land office.
We just want to build.
we understand.
I know, I seen it there. I seen it there. So we're down the street now. We're gonna be meeting over at the,
Legion Hall. Yeah, Steve Dolphin's supposed to be getting with you with the agreement, because the executive committee, we met last night.
oh, yes, I seen him today.
Okay. I'm the adjutant, hey, you know.
Let's get things moving. I've been involved in block grants work before in San Antonio. From their
Yeah, I was,
product
I
and
talked with
Yeah.
him.
provided services.
I just got this.
That was a big job. I mean, they paved probably 25 square blocks of that east side of San Antonio. It was that the plan was to go and rebuild the streets from there.
Right, right, that would make sense.
Took out every block. They took out from blocks and blocks and blocks in every direction.
How are you, sir?
Hey, Ennis was,
Counting down the days?
Replacing one was not.
were you in Ennis?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I was up there over the
So all
weekend.
those
Yeah.
landowners.
What were you doing up there?
Can't get a decent survey done because.
Business or
College,
pleasure?
college football reunion pleasure.
Okay.
Guy owns a ranch.
Man,
Yeah.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Lots
Cool.
At least 20. So you probably got mad.
Came across from 35, but going home, I took 67 all the way back over to Ico and then headed south.
Oh, gosh.
It takes an extra hour to
Yeah.
go that way, but it's,
It's a beautiful country.
yes,
Drive.
I do that almost every time I have to go to another place,
Yeah.
just to stay off 35.
Yeah. Well, 45 is what we were off of, but you were cutting over to.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 35's a mess.
Yeah, I went to,
We take 35s, we'll stop at Temple at Bucky's, and then just go down, because usually,
well,
when
that,
we come that way.
Right,
my intention was to,
Right.
well, I took 130 to start with, so my intention was just to go as far as Temple and cut across like that Rosebud area. and
Yeah, yeah.
north out of there.
Yeah.
And I guess I was on the phone and listening to something on the radio, but before I knew it, I was up the hills of Rosa. I just stayed on and then got off whatever the exit is.
When we had all that,
Four or something like that.
so when we had all that snow, when I first started here, we had all that snow, and it was during the freeze.
Right.
Well, I was supposed to go home and see my girls, and the snow started when I left. So I ended up taking, I went 35. If I took 130 or not. But anyway, I remember taking, at Temple, I started taking back roads to get back because everybody was just jammed packed. But, and the back roads weren't bad, except that they weren't getting as much attention as 35. So it was a little bit of an adventure.
Oh, wow.
But at the time, I slept my up
We had a location in Rosebud, so I got to know there so often. And I usually,
oh,
you
man.
know, go through Seguin, catch 130. And then I don't even
Good, how are you?
Just drive around the state of Texas.
This time I was trying to get back to the west side of it
Yeah.
before I headed south.
Yeah.
So I guess I took that, well, I took 40, no, I didn't, yeah.
Ah, EPA, yep. Oh,
Not federal.
yeah, but, yeah,
Whatever
yeah.
road took me through, back across 35 east,
Okay, yeah.
can't remember the name of the town where you catch 67.
Proposing admitted to.
Anyway, I go to Glen Rose,
Okay.
and then it kind of cut
That
the
does
corner there.
that's add an hour.
But
If
it
you're
was,
going off the later roads to the south.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, neat. Well, cool. Yeah. Old stomping ground.
hey, I'm like,
Good to see you, sir. It's been a minute. I have something to give you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not a goodie.
Well, buddy.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Just gonna give you some feedback on,
Oh, is that right?
house.
Yeah.
So the guy currently is left.
How are you?
About like that.
The chief was able to confirm that the sheriff.
Good to see you again. See you.
Okay.
So now the judge has not signed the warrant.
Okay.
The judge has signed.
Okay.
You have a officer, as well as the sheriff.
Okay. I've been asked about the one house, the washer agreements, the Benny's fighting over. When you come out of the neighborhood, that first stop and go light, there's that house that had a bunch of brush and everything.
Right?
Yeah.
That's been solved.
Well, there's still a bunch of brush and everything.
Yeah, that's
been there for a
Dr.
long,
What's his name? The doctor at the,
after Beth bought the house.
because I was gonna try to, he bought that in the 4 lots.
No. I mean coming out the backside on Geneva, going over the bridge to that first stop and go light at
On the
Geneva.
right.
Yeah, the greenhouse with all the
Yeah.
brush.
Yeah, with the tires on the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
There's 4 lots there
okay.
in that house,
Yeah,
and it's sold.
because all that brush is still there and
Yeah.
they've been giving out warnings and everything in the neighborhood and then they look at this and they're like, well, what the
Yeah,
hell?
I don't think the grass is super tall. He knocked
No,
down a bunch of those trees.
it's all the brush.
Yeah.
And the trees they took down, that they pushed over onto the city's
Yeah.
easement, that
Yeah,
one,
he pushed it down into the ravine. I saw it.
yeah,
That's all
so,
after that.
okay. Like I said, I have people asking me, and I'm like, I'll put a picture out there. But okay, that'll be good to know, because the neighbors are getting
Oh, you got some more, didn't you?
Chips with him.
getting a little bit neat. I'm like, oh, very good. I had my surgery.
Yeah, it's done.
Well, for the finger, yeah, they had to take out more bone than what they initially thought. So my finger is gonna end up either being the same height as this one or this one.
Hopefully we won't need
Yeah, I
it for a
know,
long
it'll
time,
be-
but there.
But,
You look like you're ready.
hi. All right, how are you? So which team does your kid play for?
At some point, and I was on the phone trying to figure out
Oh
what's
my
going on.
God.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, hey, I'm good.
Golden boys.
I
Hey, Clay, what time do you need to get out
don't
of here?
know why. I send y'all a link.
Okay, we'll just move this right after.
333 feet.
Then I was coming up here and I was looking at my phone, and I thought my stepson, there was nothing on that.
Okay, so
And he's at the legislature, he's part of that.
Yeah, let's
I'm
just
like-
move the executive
So they
session
call
up
me and-
front.
My old neighbor, which I've been watching on Facebook, we were friends.
How long is that, do you think?
They're gonna take her off.
Two, yeah, tell you what, let's
Couldn't answer
move.
back. 3 days ago, 4 days ago, and Cody.
Yeah.
And Brent, which we live by, said they got her back, and they apparently had to put her on a ventilator, and now they're gonna take her off. It's so horrible, 'cause I said, well, maybe something will change. Billy, he was calling to tell me, he said the girl, knew her and let him know. He said, I thought I'd let you know, and I said, well, I noticed on Facebook last night, she was trying to find out
So maybe move the
how
executive.
she's doing, and he was like, I need prayers, I just want to wake up, and I'm thinking, we need somebody else wrong with she's on the ventilator, and I'm thinking, okay, that's a little more than an asthma. I don't know what happened, but
Yeah,
that's scary. You won't
Yeah, let's just do,
won't know what to do.
Maybe difficult.
let's just put executive session before the consent agenda.
Okay.
And that way we get him out on time and she gets her time.
Okay.
So executive.
I was just looking forward to being done by 6:30.
I'm shooting for 7, let's go.
All right,
I
ready,
have
set,
a-
go.
Yeah, and I didn't, sorry, I got to chicken though.
I have
Minus. Okay, I'm down to minus 24 days and get to see my kid for graduation.
Oh, you're fine.
Yes,
I have
he had his
more.
wisdom teeth taken out yesterday. No.
All four of them?
Yeah, no, the military takes all 4, even if you're not having any problems. He was disappointed, he wasn't losing anything.
All right, we're going to bring this meeting to order at 5:30. We'll start with our roll call.
Shane Martinez, District 1.
Paul Carey for District 2.
Phil King, District 3.
Harold Stein, District 4.
Darren Schroeder, Mayor, and Councilman Dyer is not going to make it today. He's under the weather. All right, if you will please stand with me for the pledges of allegiance and remain standing for the invocation, Dorothy After. First, to the American flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please remain standing. We have Pastor Mitchell Cobb from Calvary, is it?
Friendship.
Friendship, of course, church.
And thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to read from Titus 2, verse 7, and it reads, "In your teachings, show integrity and seriousness, and let everything be set by example." Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight and our City Council, and we pray that you would lead, guide, and direct their decisions. We ask and pray for your blessings and favor
be upon the people you've called to lead this city and our community. Father, we pray that you would give them your wisdom and that there be unity and oneness in their agendas and in their decision making. And Father, meet the needs of our city and bless our businesses, our homes, our communities, our schools, our churches, and keep them safe and in your care. Father, we love you, we give you honor, and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, we ask and pray these things. Amen.
Amen. God bless you. Thank you, Pastor. Just be seated. All right, we're going to start things up a little bit. I do apologize. We've got some schedules that we're going to help accommodate. So we're going to move executive session, item number 13. We're going to move that next. So we'll go into executive session at 5:33. Oh, I guess I need to read that. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meeting Act, Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, entitled Consultation with Attorney, and Texas Government Code, Section 551.085, entitled Deliberation Regarding Economic Development Negotiations, the City Council may convene an executive session to receive advice from the City Attorney regarding the following. And the item is NP Homes Development Agreement. So we are now at 5:34. We'll go into executive session.
Stacy, put them in their seats up there? Sure. When they come back? I was thinking about that. Just remember that the live TV broadcast everything you say. Right. Yeah, but the council's not watching that. The city does. And so I actually had some of this. So my name is Chief Jim Cole. So, right there, 16. Seems like only solved all the last time I was here, was the one I think that you so that was 2 months ago. That's super reduction. That's the last time it was so well, no, sorry, well, I didn't finish this course. My item came up and I was outside. Yeah, that's because they have this one back in Germany. I got a oh, was I city council ever? But no, last week we looked at the village. Last Wednesday. I didn't know we said everyone, but then so I didn't want to arrange all different contexts for these. I don't have a presentation except what the village is great. Didn't see council is sick. I don't think it's board. They're moving it back. No, the lease has been sitting empty for years. But they're actually like. Yeah, no, that's in that, but that all is called behind.
Because they had a building next to it.
Right. That's interesting. That's awesome. And they're still working on it. I guess they're.
Yeah, they demoed the building.
Yeah, I saw that. Actually helped out one thing because it's between us and the house behind it, the building. There's one that's always been. You know, I have, and it's kind of the first thing, the first thing they do. I have to write something like seems like you probably.
Yes. Yes, there's,
But I go along, for some reason, it's close to the main house. So I actually, I live in Candy Direct, which is one thing ourselves, there's actually, started that meeting in 1974 in Mexico. Expanded the United States, he sold the United States portion of the chain to the Indians. Then he said, hey, well, I'm back to the United States. So he started reading about the market, expanded that, and then
but I wonder, are you got something else that was really successful?
That's what he said. Yeah, they just put the lines in the guy from Mexico started this, what was that, 50 years ago? This is whatever. But great company, great history. Not a lot of years ago. One of the council members said, did you guys bring
It
chocolate?
was long days. I'm retired military.
Yes. Restaurant by right means you have to get an SUP. Association.
Because they did all of that.
But I've done.
So if you go to the trail, that's.
Small projects. What's the name? They call it target. Like certain kind of days. All of a sudden, the target dollar shows up.
Right across the street. Right.
Yeah, this
His deal was,
he's not
building a wall. Interesting. So I thought you showed the council. A lot of.
I read that all. Well, well, the other thing, he's crazy, he likes that. He's definitely I saw your dog out there.
My father, but I've been lucky because I've only been like 5-7 I think the hard girl is in fact, the house, which is now an office, was 8 shares commercial zoning. It's either a city or
Yeah.
Every time I go there, I say, I would, it's funny, one of the council members, one of the council members asked me the other day, I love that it was located, like ours, I was supposed to be on that. So, inconvenient, right? For some people. I went on the ghost and I drove over estimated. There are no property. First, I don't know. But yeah, seriously. It's nice. I would run for city council. Yeah, I wouldn't take any more cases. They're beautiful. This house, it's got to be a house. It's built this. It's got this basically this display room. It's not just a room. It's a display room. And he's got 2 separate rooms. That's where we see another
I probably sit very, very back, so I don't block anybody.
I'm on 5 floors, and I
You're going to go
And This would be prevent circle having to
Yeah, don't need to accidentally bump the finger. I'd be accused having to fight declared temporary insanity. You laugh. Loki bumped it the other day.
Did you hear some words?
Joe's like, what are you doing?
You gonna be okay? All right. Let me know when you're ready. Okay, we are returning from executive session at 5:54. I'm going to go ahead and, as we reconvene in open session, we'll go to item number 15, consider possible actions resulting from items posted and legally discussed in executive session, and that is consider and take appropriate action on an ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a development agreement with Lynn Shearhart, Beverly Shearhart, Charles Havey, Marilyn Havey, and NP Homes LLC, establishing a program of economic development and ordaining other matters in connection therewith.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Clay. Thank you, Rob. Thanks, team. Good to see you again.
Good luck.
Take care.
Take care.
All right. We are then going to go to the consent agenda. Oh, citizens' comments. I'm so sorry. Citizens' comments. Thank you.
We should do that.
We should have done that first. Okay. Would anybody like to come up for citizens' comments and forgive my missteps as we're moving things around? No? Okay.
That was a rather bold move.
I just neglected. Okay. So next item is consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have minutes for March 14th, 2023, regular called city council meeting. Approve resolution for support and expanding access to high-speed internet access and broadband. Approve resolution authorizing submittal of application for CDBG program. Approve resolution authorizing a city representative for participation in the CDBG program. And approve resolution on the city joining the state and political subdivisions in the Texas opioid settlement agreements.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Great. So, actually, can I use the display dongle? And just, I wanted to make clear for the people who've seen the items that were on the consent agenda, we are working very closely with our state and federal representation. We have a number of meetings with them coming up with different agencies. We're trying to make sure that we're aligning the needs of the city with the agencies that can impact us. So that is, we work pretty consistently with the county, with the state, and with the federal government to make sure that we are picking up any kind of grants that are available, working with them on policies that could impact us. So we're being really, really proactive about that. We've got I'm talking as I'm bringing this up, we have a meeting at the state capitol next week, and then another one coming up in the next few weeks to the U.S. Capitol. All right. Is that the right one? Look at that. Okay, date. I don't have the date on there. Okay, so the items on the mayor's report are the TxDOT grant, the Unified Development Ordinance scope, the downtown master plan, and stormwater drainage. So just an update on grant submissions. We actually had 3 grant submissions. I think that we're going to pursue 2 of those, and that will be the historic Highway 90 bridge replica, and then the transportation alternatives plan. So the bridge was there. The bridge that was taken down was there. It was built around 1904. It was taken down around 1940 when the new bridge was put up. It looked like that. This is looking basically from the right about where the Steinbach House is, a little bit west of that, looking over the dam. If you look at this, I've got that's the original Highway 90 plat map. I'll go into a little bit more detail. You can kind of see it right here. And I've got a better representation. So if you look at where Highway 90 goes, just below that yellow line, the yellow line was the original bridge, and so that's where we're looking at putting it, to replicate the bridge that was there. This is actually from, I think this was copied from the San Antonio paper back when they were announcing what was going on with that. Some other pictures of it. So the idea is to recreate the bridge that was there and make it so that it's not a driving bridge. It's more of a micromodal, so it'd be pedestrian, might be like a golf cart size. We're looking at, or we're working with the Texas Historic Commission because that would go basically into where their parking lot is, and they have expressed support for that. We just have to work through the individual details with it. So the idea is that we would do a replication of what was there, leveraging some of the original abutments as aesthetic elements, but it would be a properly designed TxDOT bridge. It's a few $1 million, and I think that our chances are pretty decent. TxDOT, local TxDOT seems to really like the idea, so we'll be moving to the next stages in the next few weeks.
Well, on the other side, you said one side would be the Landmark Inn?
And the other side is Steinbach House.
Right.
There's an abutment, there's still a granite abutment there at the riverbank on the
Yeah.
Steinbach House property.
So how close to the house will it get, or will?
It's way over on the river.
Okay, okay.
This kind of shows here.
I want to tell people that's upside down.
This is upside down. The top is south and the bottom is north.
That was normal for TxDOT.
No, it's not backwards.
Asking the question.
It's upside down. Okay.
Okay,
So you see?
yeah.
All right. Okay. So we're working on that. Hopefully, we'll get some news on that in the coming weeks and months.
I did get, so 2 things. The Quiddity, their task order to get this done, we'll have to do a detailed engineering plan for the second submittal. We do feel very good about TxDOT's response, as the mayor said. That'll be coming to you all at the April 11th meeting for approval. And then the other thing, she did reach out to me today. We need to get with whoever you're talking to at Landmark Inn. She needs to get that, we need to set up a meeting.
Absolutely.
She wanted both parties. I said, well, we're one of them.
Yes.
So-
You've already
so
got
that's
half.
easy. The other one is just Landmark, so
All right.
I told her I would.
And I was talking to their chief architect, so
Yeah.
he said that he was going to get us in touch. I'll help coordinate that meeting.
Perfect.
Yep. I know this has been a long time coming. We were trying to find some replica parts. They were saying that they had another bridge that we might be able to leverage. I think that would be a hard thing to coordinate because this whole thing has to be done, like both of these grants would have to be done completed within 2 years. So the other one is the transportation alternatives planning. So this is a little bit different than the thoroughfare plan. This is about transportation alternatives. So every micromodal is anything that's not a car, basically, takes traffic off of Highway 90. And so that's one of the reasons that we're trying to do the bridge. We're trying to do some other ways to connect across the river, across Highway 90, so that people don't have to get in their cars to go do everything. The other 2 statistics are U.S. statistics. 60% of all trips are 5 miles or less. In 2015, over 5,000 pedestrians and 800 cyclists were killed in the U.S. And another interesting thing is that Highway 90 only has 3 crosswalks in Castroville. And not to mention getting across 471, lower the cost. So the transportation's alternative planning, it is a planning grant that we would go through and find ways or areas where we can put in bike lanes, where we can put in crosswalks, where we can make it accessible for people that aren't just in cars. Again, centering our lives around people, not around their automobiles. The next item is, so I kind of lumped this. The three things are the Unified Development Ordinance Scope, the Downtown Master Plan, and the Stormwater Drainage Plan. So I lumped those all in planning for the future. We've begun doing a planning effort where we're looking at, these are basically all of, this is not the exhaustive list, this is the beginning of the list of all of the plans that we need to compile, and I've got them kind of categorized here. If you look at the left-hand side where the UDO is, the things that fall under there are the zoning regulations, the subdivision regulations, the transportation plan. If you look at, like, between the city and the county, our street types and sizes don't match up. Our widths, our construction methods, so it's making sure that we have something that is more predictable. Stormwater regulation, if somebody's doing a construction project, making sure that they're doing the proper retention, detention to keep from flooding their downstream neighbors. Natural resource conservation, it includes the things from the Parks Master Plan, usage patterns, development standards, it includes basically all of those. So that is something that we're going to be approaching. Hopefully we get that out to RFP as soon as possible. And then Downtown Master Plan is another, if you look at a lot of these, so under the city's master plan, we have a lot of this stuff already. Up in the top right hand, you've got the legend, and I don't know that this is 100% accurate, but we have the beginnings of a thoroughfare plan. It needs a lot of work. It's more like it's the whatever comes before the rough draft is what we have. The stormwater drainage plan. So I said that is still started. We had that delivered complete, but we have some tweaking to do to it, to do some phased-in approaches so that we can not let perfect be the enemy of good. We have the Parks Master Plan that was just finished. We have the Airport Master Plan. So we've got some great renewed planning efforts, and these are things that the city has been doing for decades. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll put in some mechanisms to make sure that they're revisited. I noticed that Kerrville has Kerrville 2050, and in that they had this citywide effort, but they also put into place like specific policies that staff would need to continue to propagate as the years go by to make sure that they're doing regular reviews of it. And they had some other really interesting ways of doing that, so we'll be looking at taking some examples from that. The Economic Development Plan, I say we've started that because we have the Economic Development Corporation set up, and we have begun that process with that group. The IT Communications Master Plan, so this was begun as an IT RFP. Councilman Dyer had helped out a lot with getting some of the compilation. We have the initial assessment done, and they'll come back with a recommendation for the RFP, but we'll put into our master plan moving forward what are our policies and structures in our IT and communications. The comprehensive fee schedule we redo every year. Over on the utility plan, so these are, think about them as departmental plans, but also system-wide plans. I put under streets, I put a little, I don't think I have this properly designated, but all of these departments, streets is not actually a department of the utility, so it's kind of a standalone, but the components for each department are going to be the same. So I've listed it kind of like this. So what this allows us to do is to plan for, as the city grows, how are we going to deal with staffing? How are we going to deal with facilities? What is our maintenance and replacement plan on our vehicles, on our equipment, on our buildings? What is our capital improvement plan for the actual systems themselves? And then the fee schedule feeds into the comprehensive fee schedule. So it's breaking down the individual components so that we've got some repeatability and some predictability in those. And then the public safety plan, emergency response plan, disaster preparedness plan. We have ideas on that, but we really have not made major strides with it. So Did anybody have any questions or comments on, this is something that I know that we've been working together through some of these with ideas, but I wanted to put it out in the form that I kind of compiled that into, and just wanted to get your feedback on it. Any questions about it?
Well,
Okay.
normally a city, town, no matter where you are in the country, has a 5 to 10-year infrastructure plan. So that would lump in all the utilities, the streets and stuff like that. And that would, where you would tie in your CIP projects and what have you regarding infrastructure.
Right.
So that's something that we may, for that part, not the personnel part, but that's what a lot of towns and cities across the nation have.
Right, and that would fall under the capital improvements plan. The idea would be to make sure that each one of, so the water and wastewater, and that was, I guess the other change was the water and wastewater really one plan.
It would be a sub-annex underneath
Yeah.
the 5-year plan for a city.
But just like what you saw with our water and wastewater plan, and I actually should have highlighted that because we received that report back from RESPEC, and that is understanding what our next components of scaling will be. So as we add on a new subdivision, what does that look like to make sure that we have the proper infrastructure? So each one of these items on the capital improvement plan need to fall back to the actual plan that we've got in place.
Yeah, which is a 5-year plan.
Right.
It's a master plan for a city.
Right. So these are all the components that go into that. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
an annex, yeah.
Yep. Great. All right.
Thank you.
Sure. There you go. Will you hand that back over?
I can do that.
We do have the draft UDO RFP ready to go, and that'll probably be back on the 11th for you all to review and approve. So that's coming.
One nice part of that, I think, also is that right now we're having to do a one-off with each one of the developers, and I like driving clarity with them. I like them knowing what to expect when they come in. So there's no surprises, and I think that we just have a much better experience with them with that. Next item is the City Council liaison reports. We'll start with Councilman Stein.
The airport board did meet, I think it was March 6th. I was unable to attend, and I do not have a report this evening.
Oh, yeah, I was there.
If I can
Yeah, please.
add to your item, I received David Kirkpatrick's resignation this morning. He is taking a job with TxDOT. He'll have, as a planner, he has 44 airports that will be under his jurisdiction. He's going to get to fly TxDOT planes. He'll be the only planner that is a pilot, so they're very excited to have him. Jim Halley, who you've all met, is his boss, so we can blame Jim for stealing him away from us. I do think that the nonsense that we went through with the Joint Airport Zoning Board stuff weighed heavily on that decision, unfortunately, but it was a mess 40 years ago. It was doomed to be a mess this time, I think, almost no matter what we did. So, but anyway, we're going to be very sorry to see him go. Very happy for his opportunities, and I will let you know what the plan is as far as replacing him. Now, he actually creates 2 voids because he's filling the assistant public works position. So there'll probably be 2 different strategies employed as far as trying to replace him at Public Works and then at the airport. But just so you know, that's effective 2 weeks. So I think April 7th is his last day.
Yeah, I think that I echo what you're saying. He will definitely be missed. He was a great asset for the city. I'm actually very disappointed that the atmosphere that was created was so combative. I know that was a lot for him to work through, but we all have decisions to make, and I'm really glad that he's moving on with his career. Excited for him and sad for us.
Yep. Do we see
The
him?
fact that he'll be supervising the people who supervise us, we'll probably be seeing him again.
Yeah, and hopefully you won't take it out on us, right?
No, he's not like that. All right. Next one is library with Councilwoman Martinez.
I was unable to attend. I was recuperating from surgery.
Gotcha. Okay, Historic Landmark Commission, Councilman King.
I was there.
Hey.
But can you remember it, right?
That's why I'm looking at Priscilla back there. She can correct me if I say two properties came up, both were approved. And then there's also a good discussion. They are working on a one-page type detailed flyer to talk about the responsibilities of owning a historic home in Castroville and ways that the city can assist the homeowners in this ownership. And of course, that's the Historic Landmark Commission. And so anyway, Brianna's working with that with Darren Ham. And so they had some interaction on that, and they're going to bring that back to the commission. And then the other thing is these historic designation plaques for the historic homes. And Priscilla updated people on that, got some positive feedback, and they're working together a plan that they plan to bring to city council here as soon as they formalize it about these. And we've all seen them around town. There's a little black outline with the historic home name on it. So they'll bring that back to council.
And then there's also the, the HPO, the Historic Preservation Officer. They discussed that.
See, you sure stepped up and told that. They interviewed I guess they did. Yeah, you all interviewed 2 potential historic preservation officers, and they decided to wait, digest that for a month, and at their next meeting, they'll make some type of recommendation to forward the city council on one of these 2 applicants. Is that it?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think you got it all.
I know. I saw the agenda.
You must be on it. All right, next item is review and acceptance of the annual audit report with Kim Roach.
Wait.
Herb Dyer's not here.
Herb's not here.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
But I was there.
Oh, so back it up. So Parks and Recreation with Councilman King. You were at all of them.
Well, if you remember, I'd asked Herb and you know, because there was this issue of the existing bathroom that will be is in place right next to the new precast bathroom that's coming. By the way, I went by talking about that precast bathroom. I went and looked at the one at Lions Park today. If you guys haven't walked up to that sucker, I haven't seen the inside, but the outside is pretty nice.
Inside looks really good too.
Yeah. So they had a lot to go with it. But so anyway, they weren't fully aware of all the ins and outs of that, so they understand that council has approved the purchase and the installation of the new bathroom, but that we're going to delay any decision on the existing bathroom until we hear back from them after they've thought about it some more. And I think, Devin, what else was there that went on at that meeting?
Road sign.
Oh, the road signs. Devin gave a presentation on that. Darren Ham is working with you all also on, like, for instance, there on Highway 90 where you had a big sign that says Regional Park, and they got positive feedback on that. Instead of a lot of wordage, kind of do what the state of Texas does, that little diagrams of a tent, of a trailer, of a river, of fishing, things like that. So they're working along on developing that sign to present to the council, I guess, or whatever. I think that's it, right? Yeah.
Nice. Cool, thank you. All right, now, next item is review and acceptance of annual audit report with Kim Roach, CPA of Armstrong and Associates.
Good evening, council, mayor, staff, citizens. I decided to try something new tonight. I feel like I'm always having you all flip through lots and lots of pages. I thought maybe I'd actually try technology for once and go with a PowerPoint. So I'm happy to go over any detailed information that's in the report, but I wanted to at least start with this for see what questions you may have, and just hopefully this gives a better presentation. So I want to start off this evening with going over some of our required communication that we are required to go over with you. One thing is that we're required to discuss with you any new accounting policies that you may have had to implement. And one thing that did impact the city this year was a new accounting standard that was required to go into effect. It is GASB Statement Number 87, referring to leases and how those have been treated and presented. This actually had an impact to your airport fund, not necessarily because of the terminal leases, but because of the ground leases out at the airport. But what it did is have very little net impact to the overall statements. It basically set up a receivable for all the future lease payments of all those ground leases for all those future years with an offsetting, essentially deferred inflow. It's kind of like a liability, and that's going to be amortized out. So as you receive the payment, both impacts will come down off the balance sheet. But it's a whole lot of fluff for not a whole lot of impact, basically. But I'm required to tell you about it. There were no change in your significant estimates from the previous year, and the main reason why we like to look at your estimates is we want to see if there's any room for manipulation, so we don't feel like there's anything there. They're all very reasonable and standard. Significant disclosures, there are also no change in that. We feel like the significant disclosures for the city relate to their employee retirement system, primarily with TMRS, as well as your commitments and contingency, which include, of course, your tax abatements, your TERS, and all those types of things now. I'm happy to tell you that you also complied with the Public Funds Investment Act, as well as the city's internal investment policy. And just to wrap up the required communication piece of this, we also found no internal control deficiencies. We did have one recommendation that's more from an operational standpoint, and it's just something for the city to consider. It's not a requirement, but I mentioned this last year, and it's just something that I know that management's still considering. But it's essentially just considering the idea of moving to a pooled cash system as opposed to all the separate bank accounts. What this would do would just be able to free up some operational time on the city staff side to not have so many accounts, number one, to reconcile, but would also cut down on a lot of the transfers. For example, when a customer comes in to make a utility payment or a court payment, that's right now currently hitting multiple different bank accounts, even though it's one customer's check. So it goes into one bank account, and there's all these transfers that have to get made out throughout the month. We also this year got an opportunity to do a single audit for you. So this is actually required whenever a city or any municipality would expend more than $750,000 worth of federal expenditures. So in this particular year, you did exceed that threshold, and so therefore we were required to also do essentially a compliance audit. So this compliance audit, essentially we had to test two separate programs. The first one was the Coronavirus for State and Local Fiscal Relief Funds. It's more commonly referred to as ARPA. And then we also were required to do the USDA Community Facility Loans and Grant program, and that was essentially the hangar construction out at the airport. I'm happy to report from that single audit that we had no material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, or instances of non-compliance. So all good checks. Any questions on those first couple of slides? All right, well, let's go to numbers. All right, so moving to the first slide here of numbers, essentially this is the entire city as a whole. So as you may recall from previous years, we're actually required to report the city's financials in multiple type formats. The first one takes the entire city as a whole, and it treats it like a business. So it requires all the long-term assets as well as all of the long-term debt of the city to all be included. So you can see for your government-wide statements, that's what that's called because it's the entire city. You had total assets of $59 million, and the majority of this, or about 58% of it, is in your capital assets, which certainly is reasonable because that's going to include all of the city's infrastructure, the buildings, the equipment, vehicles, and so forth. You also had total liabilities of $27 million, and of that $27 million, the majority of it, about 88% of it, is all long-term, and that's due in more than 1 year from now. So certainly your current liabilities are very manageable, and you have a good liquid ratio. After all that, that leaves your total net position of $30.9 million. And that net position is broken into three different categories. The first is just saying how much of the city has invested into those capital assets, but it's actually net of any related debt. So just for a good example, right now with the 2022 bonds that you had issued during the fiscal year ended 9/30/22, of course, obviously not all of those funds had yet been spent as of September 30, so we've adjusted that calculation in here. But since the majority of them are going to assets that would be part of the city's infrastructure, then that would also be in here and included. So you can see about 59% of your net position is towards that investment in capital assets, net of related debt. And again, basically, that's just meaning of all of your total assets, you can't really spend anything that's already invested in the capital assets. You also have a small amount that's restricted, and that may either be from special revenues, such as the tourism, or it may also be from court mandated things from the state for your court technology security, but that also includes your water acquisition and impact fees. So that makes up what the restricted net position is. And that leaves your unrestricted net position, and again, this is for the entire city, of $10.4 million, or about a third of your net position. So that's what is available for future operations and spending. We're going to see that broken down here in a little bit more in detail as to how that equates to your different funds. Any questions on the big picture overall? Okay. Scott, you keeping my timer going for a minute?
Yeah, but you're over, it's fine. We did our executive session, we're good. Yeah, the takeaways, and you'll see this at the end as well, is we're in a very strong financial position. We are not going broke. And you can definitely see that just in this, this one summary slide, but you'll continue to see it as it's broken out.
Just, I guess, on an earlier slide, you don't need to go back, but this whole recommendation of theirs that you consolidate, you don't need to answer that now, but I guess sometime in the future, if you want to answer.
I'm going to leave, well, we've had a lot of discussion about it. I'm kind of leaving that up to Leroy's discretion. Right now, I don't think it's advisable, because I want to make sure that our bookkeeping, internal bookkeeping, is extremely solid. Because when you go to pooled CAT, when you have the accounts, even though there's a lot of record keeping and reconciliation that takes place, you have due tos and due froms, and there's a trail. When you go to pooled cash, you're supposed to be keeping that same trail, but if you aren't 100% there, then it can cause issues. And we had some discussion about that this time. So personally, I don't think we're ready to do that, but ultimately that's the finance director's decision whether they want to move to that degree and whether the council wants to support that.
There can be pros and cons to it. I mean, Scott brings up a very good point that you want to make sure that you have good internal bookkeeping and a good paper trail. And so that's why some cities choose not to do that. But that's why we just mention it as a thought for consideration.
I will say I've managed cities that have done both. And I've managed a city that went from what we're doing now to pooled cash. So, but again, it was exactly the same scenario as here, where the auditor was recommending it. We discussed it, and it was ultimately the finance director's decision, and he chose to move that direction. They did experience some hiccups for like the first 3 years, but eventually kind of got to where they ironed all that out. So that's a little bit of my experience talking. Like, make sure you're ready when you pull that trigger. Don't figure it out afterwards, because it can lead to stickier audits in the future.
I was just being selfish, because that way we wouldn't have to sign those transfers.
Yeah, there are a million checks. You're right. You're right. And that's part of it. That's definitely part of it.
But one of the things that I've heard from previous city council people is that there were issues with money blending. And so this, I think the way that we have it set up, to your point, is a lot more cut and dry. But once we get to that point, and
you can't do that all electronically and virtually. I mean, you really can, but it's just,
you have to be
you have to make sure that
to
you're ready to do it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
And I think the other thing that I see from here, Scott actually made this comment the other day, and I thought it was really, it was very clear. We are not a wealthy city. We don't have a ton of money. We don't have money coming out of our ears. We have a limited amount of funds, but we're managing it incredibly well. So good, solid, we could use a boost in income, but what we have, it's very solid. Thank you.
All right. Well, now I want to move to where now we're looking at a little bit more individual, and I've also taken the general fund here and I've gotten rid of all those long-term items to make it much more the way that you actually budget and really the way the city operates. So now within your general fund, you can see that you had total assets of $5.3 million, and the majority of that was within your cash and cash equivalents, but you also had some very liquid receivables. For instance, your sales tax comes in, we consider 60 days worth, but you're certainly going to collect that from the state of Texas. Overall in your general fund, you had ending fund balance as of September 30 of $5.0 million, all of which was unassigned, and that actually equates to about 16.6 months of your average operating expenditures. So, as you mentioned, very well maintained. Overall, the fiscal year '22, you had an increase in your fund balance just for the general fund of $1.1 million, and we're going to look at that a little bit more closely in just a minute. You also had this year, this is just the governmental piece of your 2022 bond, so the total assets remaining in that particular fund were about $4.2 million as of September 30, because once we worked through all the issuance costs and the premiums on the bond and everything, that's how you have that much cash left, but what you had actually spent in the fiscal year was $792,000. I did want to touch on, of course, the revenues and expenditures for the general fund. You can see that the revenues for the general fund did exceed the budget by quite a bit. The main reason for that is because through discussions with management, so there were the funds that you received from the federal government that were commonly referred to as ARPA. And so even though that the council and management had discussed what funds they want to spend those on, we went ahead and recognized them for this particular fiscal year. And that's partly because we wanted to make sure that you were able to see that transparency. So that's where that revenue came in over budget that had not been necessarily budgeted as. But basically those funds were allowed to be spent on anything such as salaries. And even though the city may want to say that they're choosing to spend those funds on a particular project, you're certainly entitled to do so. But this just went ahead and recognized the revenue so that it was in your fund balance. Your expenditures, you can see, were actually just under budget, and we're obviously considerably less than your revenues, again, leading to that $1.1 million increase in fund balance. I did want to mention that your expenditures in total, of course, were under budget. There were a couple of line items that did exceed budget, but they were all very minimal and with understanding as to why. For example, one of them was the pool area, and that was related to the pool heater that was later approved but wasn't necessarily budgeted for. Any questions there? Just a quick snapshot. I just thought I would show you again the change in fund balance for the historical last 3 years, and we're going to see this again in just a second from more of a pictorial standpoint. But basically, again, your change in fund balance for this year was the $1.1 million. A lot of that being the ARPA funds, which was about $800,000 compared to the previous year. So you had been tracking pretty well as far as on that trend. And then this year's bump up, of course, was largely because of the ARPA funds. To see it between revenues and expenses, you can see your revenues have continued to go up. And again, some of that's coming from your sales tax as well. But the largest bump up, again, from the prior year was those ARPA funds. Your expenditures stayed very close this year compared to last, and were just slightly up. The prior year was just slightly up over the 20 historical. See, some of these slides I'm going faster, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
You're good. Don't worry about it.
I know.
So if you could back up one.
Oh, yes, sir.
If you took out the ARP funds, we would have made less in 22 than 21.
Yes, sir. I believe that is right. Let me go to my actual detailed numbers real quick. I love graphs, but sometimes it's harder to see that way. It would have been almost right at, because your actual prior year, and I should actually clarify here, these revenues and expenses actually include your transfers into the general fund as well. And so one major change from 21 to 22, of course, as I'm sure you're aware of, is the way that the salaries were handled in 22 compared to the transfers in from the utility fund. And I did fail to make a note of that on here to point that out. So part of the revenues, even though they're named that, is those transfers in from the utility fund, which those dropped from 21 to 22. But your expenditures also dropped from 21 to 22 because those salaries were actually shown in the utility fund.
So at the end of the day, it's about the same between 21 and 22.
Right. So if I look at just straight revenues, 22 to 21, taking out ARPA would have been almost dead on.
In 21, we still had that, it was like a $750,000 transfer.
Yes, sir.
That would have been considered as general fund revenue in 21 and
Correct.
not in 22.
Correct.
Because we removed that.
Well, we lowered it.
Lowered it, yes.
But then we offset it by moving some of our salary.
Right. My point is, though, that was, what, 600,000?
Yeah, so I think it was more like 800,000. But
Yeah, so 21, the transfer in was 853,000. In '22, it was $338,000.
So
So
that's
it,
another 500 you take off the 750.
It was not really revenue, but had to be put.
Right, so we basically over-reported, well, if you think about the way that we think about it, like as mere mortals, and not
Sure.
the auditor, it is, what you're seeing in 2021 was inflated by 500,000.
Well, I gotta say, I'm really impressed with the council's grasp on all this. I mean, you really have done a very good job in keeping up with how that works.
Explained it really well.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's good.
absolutely.
All right.
All right, so now to look at your utility funds, and I tried to make some graphs in here too, but there was just so much, so I apologize for all the numbers. But basically, this is going to be a lot of similar from what we saw from the very first set of the financial numbers that we looked at from the whole city, simply because the utility fund has actually become such a large part of the city. So when I say utility funds, it's actually picking up not only just the main utility fund, but it's also picking up the water acquisition, the impact fee, the sewer impact, as well as the 22 portion of the, the portion of the 22 bonds related to utility type capital projects. So overall, as of September 30, you can see again your assets, total assets were actually 36.4, but as we saw before, the majority of this, of course, is going to be within your capital assets. Similarly, your total liabilities of $19.5 million, but the majority of that, again, is going to be all of those more than 1 year away, long-term on your bonds and your certificates. So that was about 89% of the liabilities. Your total net position for just the utility funds was 16.9, and again, about a third of it, similar to what we saw before, is actually for your unrestricted. And because I didn't have a place to put it anywhere else, I also wanted to add in how much of those 22 bonds for the capital projects were spent in the fiscal year. So you can see about 2.1, and that was out of about the 4.6 amount for the utility. So a little bit more being spent in utility than governmental to date, anyway. Looking at the revenues and expenses for the utility fund, and I'm really kind of taking the highlights here as opposed to looking at the revenues and expenses, but overall I wanted to show you the operating income or loss. So in '22, again, that operating income of $792,000 may seem a little bit less if you compared it to previous year, because now more of the expenses are going to be salary related, changing up that presentation from where they had been reported previously. So that may look a little bit lower, but your transfers out, and this was my key to remember to tell you that your transfers out to the general fund were also considerably lower. So in the end, they would have almost offset. However, the utility funds this year also had a significant audit adjustment recorded, and what this capital contributions of $2.9 million represent is basically the developer agreements related to with Alsatian Oaks. Since those are going to become city assets, even though they're not necessarily all funded through city funds and only a portion of one project was being funded through city funds, then we had to recognize the non-cash contribution of those assets. So that's really what that 2.9 is. It's not true cash to the city, but it's essentially the receipt of those future assets. So then therefore your actual change in net position for this fiscal year was right at $3.1 million. And then there you go. Apparently I wanted to make sure I really told y'all, but yes, so you did spend about $2.1 million of that 4.6 of the 22 bonds. I also know that because there has been a lot of debt issuances and everything, so I wanted to also give a little bit of a picture more on that. So your total debt for just the utility funds as of September 30 was just over $18 million. And basically it splits out like this. So you can see the Water Development Board, the 2015 bonds and the 22 bonds are almost all about a third each, and that tiny little sliver is the 2016 tax notes that have actually already been paid in full in this fiscal year. And that's just what's remaining to be paid, not necessarily what monies have been spent. Just want to clarify that. Okay, last part, I promise. So we get into the airport fund now, and so as of September 30, I took a little bit different approach here because so much of the airport fund is within its capital assets, and because we also had to make that adjustment that I mentioned earlier about the lease receivable. So of your total assets in the airport fund of $10.1 million, you can see actually very, very little is actually related to real cash. However, as we'll see on the next slide, they're really maintaining their cash level. They did have total liabilities of $1.3 million. The long-term portion of that was $861,000. Again, the majority of it being more than just this upcoming fiscal year's revenues to have to pay for. I also want to just mention on the long-term liability that even though the loan with the USDA was actually approved for over $1 million, only $815,000 of it had been drawn down as of September 30. So if you actually see within your audit report, you'll notice that the loan balance of that particular item was not at the full amount just yet, simply because it had not been fully drawn from the USDA. So the airport's total net position was $7.6 million. As I mentioned, since so much of it is in your capital assets, you actually have a deficit unrestricted net position of about $35,000. So that's not completely uncommon, and again, as I'm going to show in just a second, the cash flow really is breaking pretty close to even. Any questions there? Okay, so their operating income or loss was actually about a $2,000 loss, but their total change in net position after a few other items, such as they actually had an adjustment to their capital assets for the year that caused a loss. And so their overall was a current year loss of $34,000. However, it's always important to note that of that $34,000 loss, that $232,000 of it was not cash related. It was all the depreciation because they have so many assets out there at the airport. So then that's why I wanted to add in here too, what was their actual net increase or decrease in cash, and it was $6,800. And the only reason why that's a little bit different than what you see there for the operating loss is simply because they also have to pay on their debt, which is not considered an expense. So overall, they sound like they're in an unhealthy position, but even they are staying pretty constant. Okay, I said that was the last thing. I have one last bonus slide, and it's just because I'm sorry. I promise this is the last. I did want to give you just a picture of your pension, because this is typically a long-term liability for the city, but I'm excited to say that this year it's almost so boring it's not even exciting to talk about, because your liability as of the TMRS calendar year end of 2021, that's not a typo, that's really their calendar year end, you only had $2,800 left unfunded of future pension payout. And so you can see compared to previous years, that's incredible. So you're considered 99.96% funded. Unfortunately, that's always a moving target. It'll be something different next year. But the main reason why it improved so much from the previous year is because they assumed that the investments would not earn as much as they actually did. So it put you in a better financial position than they had anticipated. But
given interest rate increases, I think we'll actually look even better next year.
Oh, I agree.
Our contribution, and we already had a really, really low contribution rate.
You do, yes.
I think I told you all the cities I worked for were 2-to-1, 7% match. So that would have the city putting in 14% towards the pension. And in one city, they were putting in 21 or 22%, and in the other was like 18 or 19%. So neither one of them were putting in 14, they were putting considerably more because there was this kind of catch-up that they had to do. This is, here, we're putting in,
I was just going to check that.
We have 2-to-1, 5%, and I want to say we're putting in like 9. We should be putting in 10, or maybe it's 10 point something, I can't remember.
Because we just
It's very
raised
low.
that, didn't we? No?
Not on the TMRS.
Okay.
You can look at Lady.
No, what we did, we created a separate 357.
Okay, yeah,
But
okay.
anyway, I think we're in a really good position compared to some of the cities I've worked for.
So I know that was a lot of information, but I'm happy to go over any questions you may all have.
Questions?
By
the way, it is a lot of information, but I think it's important for us to listen to this, but also the way you present it is very entertaining.
Well, thank
Kim
you.
does a
Appreciate it.
fantastic job, and really and truly, I think their firm does a fantastic job. This has been, our audits are very, very smooth compared to some of my prior experiences, so it's been very good. I do have to pick on her a little bit. We were going through the audit, and in about hour 3 of the review, she
Y'all
said,
get the short version,
and I
I
wish
promise.
I'm not exaggerating. It was 3 hours first time and like 3 hours another day. And that's just the time I spent with her. You know, I know that Leroy spends far more than that. But about hour 3, she says, "Spoiler alert," and she's very excited, very animated, and I was like, I gotta stop you there. You can't use the term spoiler alert in an audit. That just seems wrong. My family came to her defense because I was explaining it to the girls at home, and they said, "Dad, she's just really excited. She likes what she does." And God bless you for loving it. I mean, really, truly, because you do a great job. But yeah, some of us are not quite as
Everybody
enthused.
has their niche.
Yeah, that's very good.
And you know, when I read these things, I really go to the back where it says, you know, if there are any disputes you had. And there have been some that have been in past ones, not big things, but like, not totally, you know, where you all agree, but I'm glad that, you know, you complimented the accounting departments here, and Leroy and Scott and everything they're doing.
And that is a good point. When I first started auditing the city, I don't think that the bookkeeping at the time could have sustained a full cash system. And so that really is an indirect, but it is a compliment to Leroy and to Hilda as well. I mean, they have a very good team. And Scott does a great job of overseeing everything.
Great. I don't do much. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. You can still clap. All right, next item is consider and take appropriate action on designating Animal Control Officer Joshua Davidson as the local rabies control authority.
At this time, I want to recognize Joshua, who's here with us. He goes by Josh, but he's had literally a drinking from the fire hose experience, I think. Is that a fair? And
We know what the
Curl's
dogs
been right
do
there
to
with
fire
him. I
hydrants,
mean,
too.
Curl was happy, doing code enforcement and getting along great. And then yours truly was like, I had this idea to combine the two. But they have been great sports at dealing with that. And I really appreciate Curl's dedication to the city, all that you've taken on. And Josh, I know that you worked at Petco or PetSmart? PetSmart before, so had some exposure, but it's different, right? I mean, yeah, a little bit different. So there were a couple of times I dropped by the police department and found the two of them just, enamored with the online training they were receiving. But that was just a small window into the amount of training they've received over the last month or so. It's just been, it's been quite a bit. So thank you both for all you're doing. And we're very excited because what they have done, this training they're undergoing, has given us the ability to take a little bit greater control in our own animal care services or animal services. We're trying to move away from animal control into kind of an animal services arena so that we can be less dependent on the county. The county has been a fantastic partner, but as they've pointed out on many occasions, there's only 2 of them, and it's like 400 square miles, and it's just, and there's many more people moving in, and so they literally cannot keep up, and so that's a dangerous situation for us to be relying on them. So with that, you have an item in your agenda that explains kind of what we're trying to do. Josh would become our rabies person. Devin, do you want to add anything to this, or Josh, do you have a talent that you want to present? A musical instrument you want to play, or?
Good evening. I'll just introduce the item, and if you have anything specific you would like to ask Josh following that. But Josh has already gone to the basic course for animal control, and he has passed that. So our next step is some of the extended items, euthanization training, different things like that. And then one of the things that has come up is that we were reliant on the county for a lot of things, and if they can't get a hold of, it sort of causes some major issues for us as a city. So Josh pointed out to me that the county is our current rabies
LRCA.
Yeah, there's abbreviations for everything.
Rabies Control Authority.
Yes, and we had an issue that came up, and they gave us some direction, but they were super busy, so it came, Josh pointed this out, found the training, and went and did it. So it really makes sense that we utilize this, and that way, any kind of situation, we can streamline the process. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Nothing really. It's just mainly to just relieve some of the burden from
county, so that we can deal with any bites or any kind of rabies issues that are going on in the city. So make sure that all the ordinances are being followed.
Great, thank you.
So, when we start doing the budget for next year, because, you know, that process is only a couple of months away, are you going to plug in the budget then for their training for Carl and for Josh, for their annual renewals, certifications, any CEUs they have to do, anything like that?
Yes,
Okay.
we, due to the mid-year changes, we, of course, went headfirst with his training.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Curl has the code enforcement side, so yes, at the next budget cycle, we will look at doing the swap. Curl, I signed up for an online training for her that was considerably less than the in-person training that Joshua got sent to. So I wanted to make sure that safety-wise, they had that training there. Code enforcement, of course, is a little less safety-oriented when it comes to in that moment. But yes.
I'll just say there may be a net increase overall potentially, but we had training budgeted in animal control under the PD. So we'll shift that training amount to now the community services department, which animal services will fall under. I say there might be a net increase just because I know that the PD may want to try to keep some of those training dollars for what they need. But that'll all be part of the budget process, as I know you're aware.
Also, are you going to be giving a copy of this certificate to the local vets? That way they know that, one, you're certified, and they can contact you if they have somebody come for.
And another problem that we're kind of running into is like a quarantine facility for handling bites. I've called all of the local vets. None of them are set up for quarantine for that amount of time. So that's just something that we'll have to work on in the future, is finding a guaranteed place for when a bite does occur, that we can quarantine them properly.
Where's the county putting theirs?
At their facility as well, but it gets full. So it's not a for sure thing that we can have a space for those dogs when a bite does occur.
Great, thank you. Thanks for all you've been doing. I've seen your posts on trying to adopt out some of the animals. That's really cool. It's really nice to see that kind of care and attention for the animals. So I like the idea of changing from animal enforcement to animal services. Are we going to change code enforcement to code services as well? Sorry.
Daycare?
Thanks, Josh.
We just call it daycare?
Sometimes, yeah. All right. Congratulations. Thank you, Josh. Next item is.
I need to make a motion.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do I have a motion?
Move that we designate Joshua Davidson as our local rabies control authority.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Great. Congrats. All right, next item, staff reports.
Okay.
You might just say you're skipping.
What about item
Oh,
11?
I apologize. So we are actually, that's a good point. I am just off my game today. So this next item, 11, was an initiative from Councilman Dyer. So we're going to table that. I meant to read this I got a letter from Helen Delavan. She wanted it during the item because we were going to table it. I was going to read it during citizens' comments, but I'll go ahead and read it here. She said, first and foremost, I am not in favor of raising any park fees, and I am not in favor of contracting out the cleaning of park restrooms. I am in favor of having the park staff responsible for this task. It will certainly necessitate additional staff, but that is easily justified by the existing increase in revenue. Ask Devin for that data. The increase in park revenue is due to increased park facility use. It only makes sense that increased facility use creates an increase in restroom use. A staff person or persons does indeed need to be dedicated to keeping the restrooms as clean as humanly possible from dawn to dusk. The schedule will change daily depending on anticipated park attendance and events. This could necessitate 2 people when Lions Park opens. Park staff can and should assist with other park tasks when time permits, but the restrooms should be made his, her, their priority. I also suggest that in addition to the scheduled restroom checks, there be a sign in each restroom giving users a number to call in the event the restroom issue requires immediate attention. So a stopped-up toilet, broken fixture, vandalism, accident, etc. Perhaps the same emergency number the city already has in place would work. Calls to the person already on call could be routed to the park staff person on duty that day and addressed within minutes. Just my 3 cents worth, allowing for inflation. So we will bring that up. We had a good conversation with Councilman Dyer on approaching some different ways to deal with this, but we'll let him bring that back in the item in the next city council meeting. Okay, now, item number 12, staff reports.
They're pretty short and sweet, as you probably noticed as you went through them. I'll call attention to a couple of items. First off, there's a lot going on. I mean, sometimes it's you can't appreciate it, through a report, but the number of permits, in our permitting department have skyrocketed. There's a number of new construction that's going on, and staff is well aware that that's just going to continue, especially as we see things like MP Homes begin what they're doing. That has a trickle-down effect in our public works. You saw a list. It's telling to kind of read through that list and see what projects they're working on, and what their work orders were, because you can see how, again, the age of the infrastructure causes quite a bit of that work to come about. And then in addition to that, obviously, we have all the new projects we've started, which is fantastic. The investments we're making in the city and the utility systems, but that's in addition to trying to maintain what we already have. The other thing I'm going to mention is that the AMI is getting ready to take off. I think next Wednesday is a kickoff meeting with the AMI team here at City Hall, and all of the staff of the city that will be involved in that process. But that should be, we'll talk a lot about communication and flyers and what's going to be communicated and how and when, et cetera. But just to let you know, and for you to let your constituents know, that project is finally about to kick off for real. So we'll see that soon. And then not far behind it will be River Bluff. We're expecting to hear from that contractor any day. So sometime in potentially this week or first part of April, we should be hearing from them, and they'll be doing the kicking off at the same time. So we're gonna have two pretty major projects involved with our utilities, our electric, water, and gas, going at the same time. So just be aware of that.
Speaking of the River Bluff, so next month we should be starting to coordinate having the town hall meeting with the residents, because they're all asking me because they have questions.
Yeah.
And they're just like us. They want to be on the same page as the contractor.
Yeah, I want to get a date for the contractor, because ideally, I want to have that town hall with the contractor present.
Yeah.
So he or she can hear firsthand, the concerns and we can come to some solutions in that meeting.
Yes, sir.
So again, I agree. And as soon as we get kind of a date of when they're going to mobilize and be here, I think that'll be a good time to set that public meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions about the reports that were delivered to you?
For the water outage that we had up at River Bluff, what is that fiber optic cable for? Do we know? That they were laying that burst the pipe?
I don't. I know that it turned out that the line was not on our map, so which is unfortunate, because, and that just underscores the need to do the GIS recording that we're trying to do. But yeah, I wanted to blame them and make them pay for the fix, but you really can't do that when we didn't give them the proper locate, so they really didn't know it was there. But anyway, I don't know what that was for, or where it was going, or what its purpose was. I know that there is quite a bit that's going in all around the city that is for people that are outside of our city limits. So the data centers and the other industrial developments that are happening on our periphery, north, east, and west, that a lot of times that's where what that is for, or what that is. I don't know if that was the case here or not.
Okay, because we got a lot of people that are like, oh, they're laying fiber optic cable?
No.
Oh, is the city giving fiber optic? Or?
No, that is part of what, in your consent agenda this evening, there was a resolution about internet, and that is, the mayor kind of alluded to it, but he didn't give himself his propers, as they say, because he and EMC have been working diligently with AT&T and other providers to look at government grants to expand our internet infrastructure. Frankly, if we do that, it may not affect River Bluff. It would affect that west side that doesn't have service, but it would be, more than likely, it's going to target areas that have less than 100 megabyte service. The new governmental standard for Wi-Fi or for internet is 100 by 100. They want 100 up and 100 down. So any areas that have less than that capacity are areas that could potentially be impacted by a grant or by future work. So that's something we're pursuing. No guarantees yet, but that resolution was the first step. And that's very often the case, whether it's CDBG or something else, some other type of grant. The first step is to have a resolution of the governing body, and then you get in line with everybody else who is seeking those types of grants.
Okay.
I have met up with public affairs, or we've met up with public affairs from both AT&T and from Spectrum. Spectrum is a lot more forthcoming and collaborative. AT&T has let us know about some things, but we've had less than stellar luck trying to get our cell service improved. That's going to be a huge thing.
They did assign 2 new public affairs officers, I believe, that met with Leroy yesterday. I didn't know about the meeting and had a conflict, so I wasn't able to attend, but I'll get their cards and introduce myself at some point. Any other questions about the staff reports?
So I guess going back to the same question, they called for a utility locate, but since we know about it on our maps, because we would have been out there to locate the water line ourselves.
Right.
And that's why it was located.
Yeah, this was we thought it was on one side of the street, and it was on the other side of the street. Yeah.
And we updated the maps.
And then there's sensors on those lines, so you can't run a signal down. There's no way to find it if you don't know it's there.
And it's a deep
I'll be
hole.
honest, I need to verify that we put the GIS in the ground, because that was, the gentleman that typically does that work for us and got the training, was injured about 2 weeks ago, and so he's been on and off works. I don't know if he actually went and reported it, but that's been basically the mandate that I've given John and our public works team, is that anytime we have a break, or something new in the ground, we are utilizing our GIS captured, point capture data to capture those lines and put that information in, including as much detail as we can. Pictures, size, what it serves, et cetera, because that's what's going to inform our mapping in the future. So I need to confirm that. But
so we use...
certainly we updated our maps.
We use iWorks for our ticketing system, right?
Yes.
So when they have a break like this, are they putting in a ticket to update the map so that it can be tracked?
I don't know.
Because typically when you do something like that...
Well, what I don't want to, yes, I don't know. I know that, again, what I just told you is what I've requested, and so it should be happening every time, but I don't know if there's a separate work order for it. I think it's just happening with the work order to make that repair.
It'd be worth looking into making a separate work order, because then you can track whether it was actually done or not.
Yeah.
Trust but verify.
I got one other question.
Yes.
Because I know we've talked about this, but some of these code compliance issues that go back forever, and our citizens keep hammering me a copy because you're not showing up anymore. I guess I would like, and do we have to do this in executive session because it has to do with the courts, but we can't sue the people, we can't do something, and I guess in a future thing, if it has to be because it's legal stuff, well, what choices do we have to push these? Because some of these things, like you're sitting there March 22, nothing's gone on. August 21, it started off, and the last thing in there is March 22, and, council looking into civil suits against them for it's over a year now, but how can we get some information on what's going on related to those?
Well, so I'll speak to a couple of those. I actually gave Councilman Martinez an update right before the meeting. that we were finding out on that one that we were looking at pursuing a potential civil suit against. They have a warrant. The warrant hasn't been exercised. I had asked Chief following our last council meeting to contact the sheriff and verify whether they would detain this person if they were picked up on a warrant. He was able to confirm that they would, because which is contrary to what we believed in the past. The warrant is not signed. The judge will have to sign that warrant, and then we can go execute on it. And execute on a warrant means you show up at their house and you take them to jail.
And we can't do that, it has to be the county.
No, we don't have
No,
we do
us.
that. We can do that, but we had to make sure the county would take them, because we don't have a jail.
I understand.
So, but the first step is for the judge to sign that warrant. The judge may not have signed it in part because they probably didn't believe that the county would accept them. So that information is like hot off the presses this afternoon. So, but in answer to your other question, well, what more can the city do? I think part of this is a staff, including myself, understanding of what the council, how far the council wants to push these various issues and how long you want us to allow them to continue without remedy. You know, in general, we try to work with people. You know, we'd rather them abate it. We'd much rather someone abate it than accept a fine. We don't, you know, the city's not trying to you know, I think some people are skeptical that the city is trying to turn this into a money-making endeavor of some kind, and the fact of the matter is, we'd rather give, you know, several warnings and then a citation. And, you know, we try to drag it out to get them to remediate the problem, because at the end of the day, the issue really is about your neighbor not liking how your house looks, or the other nuisances that may exist that are causing a public disturbance of some kind, a public nuisance of some kind. So we'd like to see that remedied.
This one property, though, they violated so many laws.
Well, I think the way that we could deal with that is looking at the severity, somehow ranking the severity from like 1 to 5, and just saying the highest severity we deal with.
Is severity based on number of complaints, or is it based on the type of complaint, the nature of complaint?
I think that we need to.
The violations.
Yeah, I think that we need to take the violations and look at, because it is kind of subjective with a lot of that. But I think that if we take that and look at it, just, this is a list of the types of violations, and then we start to categorize that.
The other thing that I understand to be the policy of the city is that we are a complaint-based code enforcement city, meaning that even though Curl and Josh are going around the city looking at violations, if the complaint is from council, in other words, if you've given us direction, for instance, that brush needs to be cleaned up, which I have, I've said, look, you know, we really need brush cleaned up. We can't have people leaving this bulk out all the time. That's a real problem for us. We need that cleaned up. And so they'll go out and they'll monitor for that type of thing. And the complaint really is it's coming from the city itself, not from the neighbors, et cetera. We're driving the complaint. But most other things, I understand to be complaint driven. The concern that I would have about a complaint driven policy is that when you start to say, okay, we're going to base this on some tier level, and we're going to be very aggressive with some folks who are not responding. Well, what about if they can drive somewhere else in the city and see the exact same issue, but none of the neighbors really care, they aren't complaining, because that's just the kind of standard for that neighborhood, they're okay with how things are, that creates a disparity in equity, and I think we could end up in trouble, maybe? I don't know.
Well, I think that if you take these as a severity-based thing, part of what you put in there is also which ones are proactive, because there are some that need to be proactive. They can't.
But are we complaint? Let me confirm this. Are we complaint-based?
I would say historical. That's it, but I don't think that is completely correct.
I mean, that's a council decision.
Well, I know.
We don't have an item to discuss it.
I think we need to be fair at all in the fact that you can't say, well, that one. No, I don't think you can be complaint-based. I think you have to be, especially if some of these are these backflow preventers.
Well, I would suggest maybe we need to have this discussion on a future council meeting where we actually start to lay out, here's what our policy is about code enforcement. Is that what you were going to get into? Yeah, because we're a little off topic? We went too deep?
No, not yet, but.
Getting close.
In there.
We're getting close.
I think this is, this is definitely a policy consideration, and so it needs to get on an agenda for some discussion and some directives.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I did ask if we needed to bring that. But
Yep.
that's a good thing, because I think we need to have a better understanding. Because again, just looking at the dates on some of these, it just,
Well-
like past due accounts, when they get past a couple of years, for me, I get bust out, so this is,
well, the one property, they're beyond 3 strikes. They keep adding to the violations
Well,
with
and-
no hesitation.
we need to understand what we go.
Yeah, and so, and now I have the neighbors around them are contacting me because now they're playing music and all that all hours into the late night. They have a huge spotlight. They put up 9-foot tall boards to block, that way you can't see what they're doing in their yard. It's escalating more and more. So that's why this is a hot one.
Okay. We'll get that on a future agenda. All right, anything else on the staff reports?
No, very good staff reports from everybody.
Thank you.
Although, wait,
Uh-oh.
something had from a $300 to $3,000 increase in revenue.
350%? It's probably parks.
It was, but it was kind of a funny thing. Oh, why? It was the washing machine users.
Yeah.
Why did that come up so much?
It was part of it's just our budget. We didn't budget a whole lot of money in that line item, and it's not a lot of money. It's like $3,000 in revenue.
Yeah, 2453?
It's the time that they paid out, so a lot of that probably was last year that we got paid right when budget started, and then we've already started adding up, so we were,
Oh, we don't go and open up the change jar below the washing machine and
nope, we got, yeah.
we have a service or?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
100% profit now, we don't lose anything with that, we've got rid of all the.
But someone comes and collects the money and then sends us, okay, that explains it. Yeah, I just noticed that I knew I was gonna ask that question.
What about the pool? Did you see that? It's a 609%. It went from budgeted 1,500 to 9,140.
What was it?
The pool rental school?
Yeah.
Oh, that was it, but that's, I assume because of this, the diving team, that's what I was.
Well, because of the heated.
Yes.
Not
So
diving,
when we-
swim team.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, when we adopted the budget, I don't know if we had it.
No,
Yeah.
it was in February, so.
Right.
Yeah, because I see the school buses up there like every morning when the pool was open, so I just, that's why I figured that was one. So I didn't ask that one. But you could.
There's probably gonna be at least 5 or 6 items this year.
That'll be
The
over.
athletic field fees were not, yeah, so there's a lot that'll be.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. Next item is discussion on future agenda. items. Bless you. What are these? We're going to talk about scheduling options for City Council Strategic Planning Workshop. And what was the date that you set on that, Scott?
Seriously?
Sometime in there.
No, it was, I think it was May 17th. It was the weekend of, or week of May 17th.
Tentative,
It's right after y'all are sworn in.
May 17th, 18th, or 19th for the 3 days you set out.
I think we're talking about doing the 19th and the 20th,
A Friday or a Saturday?
Friday and a Saturday.
I'll be out of town that 20th.
And I'll be out of town on the 18th.
So,
You want to try another day? Another week?
well, I can't. It's in order to use the facilitator, that's the week that we have to use it.
Can he do the 16th?
I believe it's that he's open that entire week. So you would like do Tuesday and Wednesday? The problem I have with that is, my challenge is, several of you work. And David's going to be a new council member. I don't know David's schedule, but yeah, I know Paul, you're working during the week.
I can work
Sheena,
around.
when your finger's
You can
finally
work
good,
around
you
it.
may be at the store some. Like, I want to be
Yeah, but this is
respectful.
enough notice I could put on the calendar saying I'm not going to be
I
there.
just want to be respectful.
I can schedule around.
Okay.
Jenna,
And it's probably be, normally we try to do a day and a half, but generally it's because I'm doing like on an all-day Friday and then half-day Saturday.
I think we just do a little bit longer and split it between the two.
Yeah.
Are you able to get out a little bit early to go to this?
I'm sorry, I missed the date.
So it'd be the week of May the 17th, and we're looking at the 16th and 17th, which
Yeah.
are Tuesday
No,
and
it'd be-
Wednesday.
Tuesday the
Derek said
16th.
You were out.
No, I'm out on the 18th.
Yeah, so it'd be
Yeah,
Tuesday and
you said
Wednesday of that
17,
week,
so-
right?
Yeah.
Right? Tuesday and Wednesday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah?
Okay. And let's just do, like, maybe early afternoon to early evening
On both
Okay.
days?
on both days?
Yeah.
No mornings, no all day?
No, I'm gonna, let me get with the facilitator and see how much time he needs. He's got kind of a program he goes through, so let me see.
So
Part of
time
it
to
will
be-
involve a test that we will all take beforehand, like a personality type test, before it all starts. So I'll get that conversation going.
They're going to find out that you're insane.
Well, it's more about our styles of management, that kind of thing, so.
I normally fall into this area.
And so, because you sent that calendar invite out to us, when you come up with the right date, you'll just update us all at the
Revise
same
it,
time.
yes.
I don't know if it made it in the report or not, so this is not for discussion, it's really just advising you that in the community development report, Tondred Parkway, we have determined does not need to be annexed, so you had a petition for annexation, we do not need to act on it, it's already been annexed. And then as far as acceptance of the street goes, acceptance is administrative. I think in the past, the city would accept streets or public infrastructure, but our ordinances do not require that. And you can tell me, we've looked into it, and that appears to be the case. So it'd be an administrative acceptance, and then Walmart will receive since there's already that eastbound roadway, their warranty will be fulfilled. The street's in fairly good condition. But anyway, none of that's, I can't really discuss, we can't discuss it, I'm just going to inform you that's where that stands. And we will update Will Collins and the Alsatian Oaks team on where Tondred Parkway stands. We will need to start treating it as a public right-of-way, so we need to...
I was going to ask about the tractor trailers.
Yeah, there's trucks parked along there, other things. Our ordinances do not, as far as truck parking, the limitations on truck parking are location-specific or dependent on whether it's a fire lane. And so we're going to have to do something about that probably. So the staff will bring you an ordinance change in the future for that. That'll be a future council meeting item. Anyway. So we're working
And I
through
think
all
I think that's something that we need to deal with sooner than later. I want to be careful about making too many changes as we go through this UDO process, but I think that is worthwhile dealing with something like that. And in talking to the chief, it probably makes a lot more sense instead of doing like you can park here, but you can't park here, and you can drive a truck here, and you can't drive it there. I think it's better to do it by zones, and we can take our, but anyway, yeah, I think that we take a look at doing that.
Okay.
And then so one slight change, if you have a future agenda item, please make sure that you're filling out the forms that you have. Based on a strong preference from Councilman Dyer, I'm going to put on anything that you need to put on there, I'm going to put it on there and allow you to talk to it. I've been trying to prioritize things, but I believe that is a little bit too controlling, and so I want to make sure that I'm empowering you and not controlling you. So we will put those on there, and we'll just work on, if they start getting too long, we'll have to work through something like that. But please do make sure that you've got those submitted. We have to have all the documentation the Wednesday before, and make sure that you get them onto the pending agenda items so that we can anticipate it. So I think that's all that we have for that. Is there anything else that?
One more calendar item, Paul. The dinner that we've been talking about doing, do you know if that week works, the week of the 20th?
I thought I sent you 3 dates.
You might have.
20th of what?
Of May, when we're talking about, not the 20th, but like that week. If we could do dinner either that Tuesday or Wednesday, that would be great, because we could have our retreat or our workshop and then go have dinner one of those nights.
I will have to check with my scheduler.
Yeah.
Make sure, see what dates I sent you.
Tuesday would be better for me because the hubby closes the store on Wednesday. So by the time he's done working, he can...
HLC meeting is on Tuesday, but as long as you cancel with me, I'm fine.
Priscilla?
Probably reschedule it if they had something.
And Parks and Rec is on Wednesday.
I'll look for my email, it's not on my phone, I will update you, or we'll discuss it.
No. No, ma'am. Not allowed.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Is there anything else that we have not addressed on the pending agenda items list? All right. So we are then through the agenda and adjourned at 7:17. I know. You're all excited.